Hi, I'm Charisma Glassman, Senior Partner and Global Head of Retail, Consumer, and E-commerce Advisory at Genpact, an advanced technology and solutions company that helps global retailers and brands turn their AI transformations into real ROI. With 24 years of experience, I'll be speaking today about my latest Fast Company article on future operating models in the age of superintelligence. There's a quiet anxiety running beneath the enthusiasm about artificial intelligence. Executives understand that the systems are growing more capable by the month. What they cannot yet picture is what their own company will look like once those systems can reason, plan, and act across the enterprise with very little human direction. The real question of the superintelligence era is which operating model survives contact with AI. Most leaders I speak with still treat AI as a tool that gets layered onto an unchanged structure. Meanwhile, departments, approval chains, and headcount math all remain where they are, while AI makes each box on the chart move faster. It's the wrong way to think about the future. Once intelligence becomes abundant, the binding constraint is how well the organization is designed to direct intelligence in the first place. Companies that are pulling ahead are redesigning the model itself rather than accelerating the old one. Here is how that new model is taking shape. 1. The org chart becomes a control system. The traditional organization is a hierarchy built to move information up and decisions down. That architecture exists for a simple reason. Human judgment was scarce and had to be rationed through successive layers of management. When abundant machine intelligence removes that scarcity, the layered hierarchy loses the reason it was built in the first place. What replaces it looks more like a control system than a pyramid. Leaders define the objectives, guardrails, and acceptable ranges of action. Intelligence systems then operate continuously inside those boundaries, sensing and acting on conditions without waiting for anyone's permission. The human role shifts away from processing individual decisions and toward designing the environment in which decisions get made. In the operating models now emerging, the most valuable people set the conditions under which thousands of calls get made correctly without them. 2. Work reorganizes around outcomes. Functional silos of marketing, supply chain, and finance exist because human expertise had to be grouped to be managed. Once intelligence can move fluidly across domains, those walls stop being structure and start being friction. The forward-looking model organizes itself around outcomes instead. A single team owns customer retention or margin per transaction from end to end. Intelligent systems supporting that outcome reach freely across previously separate functions. Coherence becomes the objective. I increasingly advise clients to stop asking which department owns a given capability and start asking which outcome that capability is meant to serve. That reframing dissolves a surprising amount of organizational complexity on its own. 3. The unit of capacity stops being headcount. For the better part of a century, leaders scaled their organizations by adding people. In the superintelligence era, the basic unit of capacity becomes the intelligence system. People increasingly scale those systems rather than substitute for them. The foundation of planning has changed. Capacity is a question of how many autonomous workflows an organization can responsibly deploy, govern, and trust. The economic limit shifts away from the cost of labor and toward governance bandwidth, how much autonomous action a leadership team can oversee without losing control. To succeed, organizations must expand that bandwidth deliberately. 4. Governance moves from periphery to core. In many companies, governance wraps around the work after the fact in the form of compliance reviews, audit cycles, and sign-offs. When systems begin acting continuously and autonomously, any after-fact control is simply too slow to matter. Governance must move inside the operating model. Guardrails, escalation triggers, and accountability frameworks must become part of how the system runs rather than a checkpoint it passes through on the way out. Advertisement. The most mature clients I work with now classify their decisions into tiers. They keep strategic decisions firmly human-owned, allowing supervised decisions in which systems act and humans review, and permitting operational decisions to execute autonomously within hard limits. Tiering is the architecture that makes autonomy safe enough to scale. 5. Human roles at the edges of judgment. As systems absorb more execution, human work naturally migrates toward the two places that machines still handle poorly: the strategic frontier, where ambiguity is highest, and the ethical frontier, where the cost of being wrong is highest. People are no longer measured by the sheer volume of work they produce. Instead, they are evaluated on the quality of the systems they steward and the soundness of judgment they bring to moments that genuinely require it. The skill that appreciates fastest in this environment is the ability to know which decisions to keep for oneself and which to delegate to a machine. That single discernment is becoming the defining executive competency of the era. 6. The operating model becomes a living thing. The deepest shift of all, the operating model stops being a fixed structure that gets redesigned and defended every few years. Leadership's job now means tending an evolving system by setting its direction, watching how it behaves, and adjusting the guardrails as the environment shifts around it. Plans become provisional by design. Stability comes not from holding the structure still, but from governing the way it changes. The strategic imperative. The mistake I encounter most often is treating the superintelligence era as an efficiency story when it is really a design story. Organizations that merely make their existing model faster will find themselves outmaneuvered by those that have rebuilt the model around abundant intelligence. That rebuild begins with an uncomfortable admission that the very structures that made these companies successful were optimized for a constraint that is now disappearing. Leaders who recognize this early will get to redesign their operating models deliberately, while the constraint still affords them the time to choose. Those who wait will simply have the new model imposed on them by competitors who chose first. The window to choose is itself the advantage, and it is narrowing.